How's it going? I'm going to try my first formal explanation of some principles to help people. Um, and this is a more passive approach to how to use what you already know to move you forward. But you got to understand a few things. One, oh man, I'm getting bad at this. Distractions are inevitable, they're going to happen. Doesn't matter. You can't do anything about them. They're going to happen because if you could always stay focused, you'd never really fail because you'd always be 100% in the moment focused on what you need to do. Failure is also inevitable. You are. If you made your whole life going and you never failed, you wouldn't be here. Think about it. Um, so the other part is winning is a process. It is not something that happens. It's a process. You just don't know. And the last one is trust is key. Now, when I say trust, I mean trust is belief in something, um, in giving your all to that belief in it, kind of without evidence, with evidence, but you gotta have the trust, usually in yourself or the process or the method. Um, Now, what we do first is we process information, and I'm trying to think of a good analogy. Let's say a boxer. The first thing you want to do as a boxer is you want to learn the process. You want to learn how to box. You want to gain the experience, and you want to then, after you learn the process, you want to practice it. And you're going to go through this process, practice until you feel you're not processing new information. And then you're going to go on to the scrap it. And I don't have a better term for it, but I say scrap it as in all this processing, stop. Just do it. Just stop it. No more processing. No more trying to recalculate. Do what you learned. Keep doing it. And scrap the processing part. Eventually, you're going to scrap the practicing part, and you're going to wait. You're going to continue to do the actions, but now you're going to feel out when it becomes natural. When it becomes natural, you've now got that winning strategy, and you're going to use that strategy until there's a need to process new information or a new tactic, and then you're going to practice it and you'll rinse and repeat. For myself, if you look at my videos, I'm going to show you a prime example. First, I processed what I wanted to do, and I started doing it. Right now, I'm in the process practice phase. This is usually the longest of the parts. But as you process new information, you make minor changes. For example, I said in my second video, cut my hair, shaving all the scrubbies off, wearing a decent shirt instead of beat up one I was wearing the other day. I'm finding better equipment and better methods to film myself that doesn't look so tacky. And I'm going to keep process and practice. Then eventually I'll be at a point like a lot of the other online personalities or whatever, and I won't have to practice because it'll be more natural until something else comes into play, which means I have to process new information. And that's my method. It's a passive method. It's very simple because I'm putting a lot into the mental working portion, but not the back-breaking one. There's other ways to do that same processing, except now you're using muscle memory and things like that, and it comes off differently, but there's still the same process. For yourself, let's say you're writing a book. Write the first chapter. Write the whole thing out. Then read it. Process what you like and you don't like, and keep doing it over and over and over, and eventually you'll have a book. It's a lot longer method, but it's the one with I assume the least amount of failure. And it works. So why doesn't it work for you? Maybe because of the first thing I said, the distractions. When you're processing and you get distracted, you skip things. You're just constantly processing but not practicing it. You aren't putting in actual use and you're just constantly processing. What about the failure part? That's a failure in processing, because processing is taking the information you know and how to apply it, not looking for what's gonna take you or what's gonna happen in the future. Just because you're practicing Evander Holyfield's boxing moves doesn't mean you're gonna beat Mike Tyson. And you're so worried about the end result, you're not doing the true processing part where you're trying to gather information and learn a better way to do things. Winning is a process. Again, You keep following those steps, the winning comes naturally, or at least it feels that way. When you're actually putting in the work, it's just a different way of doing it. Now, I'm sorry, what was the last one? Oh no, that was trust. Yeah, and you got to trust in yourself. You got to trust in the process. You got to trust in what you're doing, so you can have the positive outcome. Um, and I practice this with people when I talk to them. I look at the methods they're using to get things done, and I try to break it down and reserve it to them in a way so they can skip over the steps that are drawing them back. Let's say you think about something and you come up with all these problems. Well, are those problems processing ways to get around them, or are they just processing the negative outcomes? If they're processing negative outcomes, I tend to try to cut the person off from that way of thinking and then re-explain it to them. Hey, how is it that you're stopping at the problem and refusing the solution? Because if you keep that pattern up, you're just processing failure instead of processing a winning strategy. Um, Other methods with that is the trust factor. If you can't trust yourself, trust someone else. If you can't trust someone else, trust a few people. I mean, you got to have a trust somewhere so you have a path, because if you don't trust the path you're walking on, you won't walk it. You'll say you want to, but you won't. And the winning thing, the most interesting thing I know about the people who win the most, they're not concerned with it because they view winning as a process, not as a accolade or a benchmark. I.e., I'm pretty sure when LeBron lost those seasons, he still wasn't focused on his whole everything being the championship ring. It was more like my process of getting better as a basketball player is what I'm doing. That will lead me to a winning, but it isn't, the winning isn't the benchmark for me being a good basketball player. It just doesn't make sense, does it? Um, because I mean, James Worthy has more rings than a lot of people, and James Worthy rode a lot of benches. Ain't necessarily a winning strategy, but he got the win. You see what I mean? Or maybe his winning strategy wasn't to be the best basketball player, but it was to get rings, which he succeeded at. So we gotta understand the perspectives and things like that, so we can advance ourselves. Um, and also, just a back note, this is gonna go under a motivational thought process for people, and I'm gonna probably do my day 3 a little later on today. Um, Nice to meet you, Kyle.